All right, listen. Do you have any thoughts about what is happening in Boston and the terrorist attack? I haven't talked to you since then. Security in America, terrorism. Any thoughts at all about what's going on there?
Well, it's Hoppy. Just think about what's happened in the past week plus. Last week in Congress, the focus there was all the talk there was all the North Korean threats that they were going to send off a missile and they were going to bring havoc in American cities. We dealt with that. And then on Monday, the bombing in Boston. Tuesday, then we had the ricin threat, the poison powder that was sent to the president and a U.S. senator's office. Then the explosion down in Texas. It's been a week of a lot of challenges, but I'm particularly pleased that and I think all across America that they've identified these two individuals and is still on the hunt for one. Apparently, one's been killed this morning.
Right.
But I hope they capture the other one before he can kill himself.
I agree. Let me ask you about something. There's a bipartisan bill that you have signed on to concerning the quality of mental health care in this country. You say, quote, you say the mental health system in our country is failing many Americans. How's it failing?
Oh, we hear this in our roundtable meetings all across the district, and I think people are finding it across the country as well. We don't have adequate number of mental health facilities, and we don't have trained professionals, enough of them to deal with it. Just sit down with the veterans, and they'll talk to you about PTSD and their inability to get the proper treatment in that area. We may not necessarily be talking about a real need for new facilities. It could come out of this study. But in the meantime, let's at least identify where we need to have trained professionals and to look at this. Because if nothing else, this might also start to address this gun violence issue.
Oh, absolutely.
If we had more people that were trained to be able to capture through a profiling process or whatever that might be, that these individuals, they should not have a gun.
Congressman, I'll leave this to the mental health professionals, but I continue to hear a number of people say when we started, and we had a lot of bad conditions in mental institutions across the country, and we decided in the 60s and 70s that we were going to deinstitutionalize, which in many respects was probably a good thing because some of these institutions were really bad. But now we have fewer beds for mental health patients and people with substance abuse problems maybe contributed to mental health that we had in the 1950s. Don't we need more beds, actually more brick and mortar to treat people?
Well, Hoppy, it's easy for me to say perhaps we do. I want to reserve that judgment on that. But I know that all states have concern about costs and how they're going to come up with that. But that's the purpose of this study. Let's not do a knee-jerk reaction. Let's make sure that we can document that we have a need for not only additional professionals that could be trained and put in our clinics and the like, or perhaps more beds. But that's what the purpose of the study. We've got to identify where this problem is. We're hearing stories. I could tell you one county that I talked to the sheriff, the mental health officer in that county, and he said they have to track one man all day long because he is a risk to society, but they don't have a bed in West Virginia in which to place.
But he should be in an institution, and he should.
And he says, but there are no beds available. We apparently only have 5 facilities in West Virginia that we've closed, or the others have over time they've closed. Because just like you said, we deinstitutionalized people years ago, and maybe we need to revisit that. That's the purpose of this study. Let's go back and find out, are we meeting the needs?
Congressman David McKinley is with us, Republican 1st District. As you alluded to, it is related to gun control legislation in one way. Would you have voted for or against the Manchin-Toomey amendment if you had been in the Senate?
I would have voted against it. Yes, I would have voted against it because, again, it didn't solve the problem. You look back over all the issues that have been that have contributed to these shootings, whether it's Aurora or Newtown. All these people had guns legally. The guns were there legally, and it was not the background check wasn't the issue. Address the real problem. The real problem is mental health is the issue. It's about our violence in our society. Yeah, we can pile on more or just simply enforce the laws, Hoppy. Why do we have judges? That's why I got a piece the other day from Illinois that they're saying in Illinois the individuals with guns are only getting sentences of 2 years, and they're sending, and typically under the rules in that state, you get out in 1 year. So you use a gun in a crime and may only serve 1 year. Hoppy, it shouldn't be. We need to enforce our laws and cause mandatory sentences. When people can possibly sentence someone that used a gun to 12 years, why in God's name would a judge give them only 3 or 4 years?
But Congressman, you just said, you know, I think correctly, that we need to look at how we deliver mental health services in this country because we don't have beds for people. So if in fact that's the case, wouldn't it be wise to expand the background check so that people who are mentally ill, if they're crazy enough to go try to buy a gun, they'll show up, and they've already been committed and released, they'll show up on a registry and they won't be able to buy a gun, at least in that instance.
There certainly could be a link, and I'm not going to deny that that's ultimate. But let's start enforcing our current laws. That's much just like the same issue about immigration. Here we are, we're talking about all these new changes in immigration, but we could do a lot of it. We just simply enforce our borders, make sure close and secure our border. We sometimes get ahead of ourselves in Washington. I think over the years, I've only been there 2 years, but I can see the trend that's developed over the time. People want to pass things just to pass them. Just work under existing laws and work within that. We can stop all of these issues that have been occurring. I think if we will enforce our laws, but then I want to look at this mental health, because if it does call for additional background checks with that, then fine, we'll take a look at it. But let's enforce our current laws.